So in terms of just for any traders that they don't actually know who Joel is, I've got here 77% win record. So I think any trader would be loving a 77% win record. So that puts it in some context for them. And on the trading side, we have Chris Weston, who's actually known as the Joel Selwood of trading, because he also attracts a lot of hits to the head as well in what he does. But so we have Chris, who's one of the experts in the trading world, and he's our head of research at Pipstone. In terms of, before I'll get you to introduce yourself a little bit, Chris, but so sort of just to tie this in together. So one of the things when we did this partnership with with Geelong, we sort of sat in a room and went through, and you guys presented your values to us. And it was really stark as to the values that you had. You could literally map them to the values that we've got at Pipstone, and it sort of really showed us around how, and Joel, you've mentioned this as well, about how the similarities in terms of the way that we operate and sort of who we are. And one of the values you guys had was connection in the calm and the chaos. And that is sort of the theme of what we're going to talk about a lot today. That sort of sentence obviously has resonated well for you guys, ended up with a premiership for you guys. But in the trading world, obviously that ability to keep calm over that period, and Chris can talk a little bit about that, and obviously Joel, you can talk a little bit about that from the footy world. That's really the connection that we're really going to tie in today. So Chris, do you want to give a quick introduction about yourself?
Yeah, hi. Excuse me. I'm Chris Weston. I've been with Pipstone for 5 years. I guess my job is really to talk to people about what's going on in the market, get people excited about opportunities, help people manage their risk. There's obviously plenty of risks that are going in the market. We want clients to stay with us and be profitable. I guess we're trying to make sure that they understand how events may play out, the different probabilities around that, and trying to help them become as profitable as possible, really. Before that, I was working at banks in London. I've been doing this for about 22 years. Both on sort of trading and also research as well. So really just trying to understand what's going on in the markets and try and make sense of what's going on and how things are going from A to B and hopefully to C as well.
Great. So we're going to kick off with an easy one. Joel, have you ever traded before?
Well, not personally, but I have employed people to trade for me, which is a smart way to do it in my case. As I said, I was concentrating on playing football. Yeah. My whole journey. And I was pretty lucky from a young age, a lot of footballers and sports people from a young age probably get paid their most money at such a young age. So to be able to put it in the right place. And I'm not coming out super wealthy from football, but I'm coming out a lot better than what I would have if I didn't do some trading.
Mm-hmm. And reversed, have you ever played footy before?
I played one game. I had to stop because it was way too easy as a sport. I came from a rugby stable and rugby union, and I played one game. It was a tournament, an accounting tournament. There was all the different accounting firms in Melbourne, and my sister was working for who'd come over from the UK and said, "Oh, can you come and play this?" And I was fit at the time. I was in better shape than I am now, and I played. And the first time I caught the ball. Someone a bit smaller than Joel came up to me in my face, and my first instinct was to hand them off. And he went flying, and I thought, this was great. We ran a bit further down the pitch, realised I couldn't bounce the ball, so I touched the ball on the floor. And then next thing I did was drop my shoulder into someone and took the contact, and I'm like, get the rugby player off the pitch. But that's the only time, and I like the idea of getting someone else to pay. I'll pay someone else to play for me now.
So it just sounded like you got a life ban from that one game. Behaving like that.
Yeah.
All right. So in terms of, I mentioned the theme from the start around connected in the calm and the chaos, which is one of the cornerstone sort of Geelong values. One of the words I'm really keen on in there is the word connected. You want to talk a little bit about what that sort of value is and specifically around that point, around the connected point?
Well, we went through a period at the Geelong Footy Club where it was at the same time as COVID, that we went through that period just like anyone else. Wasn't sure what was coming up. We did a good job of fighting through that period, but at the end of it, we were a bit exhausted more than anything else. So I'd say about 18 months ago, we reevaluated where we were at with what we needed to do going forward. And we come up with a plan that we would have some guiding principles more than anything else that would help us, stay aligned to where we needed to get to. And being calm in chaos was something that we learnt through COVID, I believe, more than anything else as an organisation. And it was when everything's going fast around you, how can you take that breath to do it at your own speed? And a part of that, just makes people feel at ease. You remember that you can lean on people. You remember that you're not far away from, that next move or that next win. So that's where I think it originated from more than anything else. And I've got the CEO in the front row. So if I've got that wrong, go and ask him later.
So on that sort of side, I mean, Joel talked a little bit about, obviously footy's a team sport, so you sort of get that, you can rely on your team members. Trading is a little bit more of a isolated sort of pursuit. But how can you find ways of still remaining connected and so it's not so isolated and help you through those times as a trader?
Well, I think we're not the situation, the market environment that we trade in is pushed on us. We can't choose whether it's chaotic markets or chaos or calm markets. The connection comes with the assessment and the understanding and your ability to read the volatility in the market, the trading range, how much emotion's flying around, the liquidity in the market. All these factors are forced on us, and we have to make money out of that situation. We have to read that. So the connection for me is how we assess that, and it's not like take an Avatar. I watched it with my son the other day. Where Jake Sully gets on the Ragany thing. I'm not sure what the word is, but he's one of 5 people to ever do it, and he connects that thing, and suddenly they read between the 2 lines, and it's kind of like a metaphor, I suppose. When you're sitting down at you wake up, you sit down in your trading screens, and you want to know what's going on. You need to know what your positions are doing. You want to know how markets are interacting, the sort of percentage moves, what markets, what's caused that. And it's that understanding, that assessment. I think that's where we get the connection. But the markets are forced on us. We have to try and adapt to that environment as traders.
It's identical in sport. What Chris has just shared there is identical. A lot of the performances are actually forced on us, and so you're continuing to have to adapt. Like tonight against Collingwood, we will be against a team that's been sitting top of the ladder, and we're not quite sure what type of team's going to be showing up. And so we're going to not only have to prepare for them tonight, but also then adapt during the game, which is what traders have to do, right? As all that information's coming in, that's what you've got to do.
There is a key meeting come late in the week that our coaches sit in, and it's simply called a what if meeting. And they bring up anything that may happen, pros and cons. If we're playing well, what does it look like? If it's not going to plan, then how are we going to get align things to get things back on track too? And then they sieve through all that, and then they tell the players. They might fill a couple of leaders in amongst if this happens, maybe we do a move that you can do out on the ground without us telling you. But you don't need to, that they can rely on what they're passing on, from up in the box.
Ready to go, you? No, you can stay. I mean, so you're talking there obviously about that sort of, that preparation that sort of helps you handle that chaos. One of the things, so I'll just jump to, Joel has a book out for anyone that hasn't seen that. So released last week, or the week before? Yep,
so Wednesday week. So we're 9 days in. Made the bestseller throughout. Yesterday the results come out, which was nice. So number 2. So it is something. There was something about sex was number 1. So I can't be too disappointed with where I have landed. But it's been good. I mean, I didn't plan on writing a book. I got pushed into it a little bit, but I'm really glad that I did do it because I just finished footy, as I said, 16 years of a career in there, but life before that too. And it gave me a good time to reflect on good people, on messaging that I've probably forgotten about and then brought to the surface. So it's all in there, and then happy to share along today too.
That's great. Yeah, I've got the book. I've read it, I think 2/3 of it at the moment. Sounds like there was a better book I should have been reading. That's the number one about that it was sold to me. But no, it's a fantastic read. I think for anyone that's interested in sport and just sort of getting into the psyche. And as I was saying to you before, like, I think one of the great things about it, some of those books feel like they've been written by an author in someone else's words, but it really feels like it's your words. So it is a fascinating read. The reason I mentioned the book, though, is one of the things I want to pick up is you actually talk about, you reference something called your lonely hours, which is sort of the hours you spend training. And obviously what we see from you is we see you on the pitch and we see all that stuff. But, you know, there's many more hours obviously spent alone, like doing those things. Do you want to talk about how that preparation helps you with, or helped you during your career with Calm the Chaos?
Yeah, well, a lonely hours is a simple term of high performance before that become the buzzword probably more than anything. And I learnt the lonely hours term through Hock, believe it or not, who we've spent a lot of years from, but a lot of years along the journey. But it was just about preparation more for me. So lonely hours, when I talk about them, is yoga and extra swimming, or looking after your body or your mind, your teammates, on how you're bringing them and getting the best out of them. There's a lot of planning that goes into the role of being a leader, but along those terms, it's always important to look after yourself. And I probably learnt that from a young age. I became captain when I was 23, and if you tell me that, if you told me that back then, what I was going to do and go through, in the modern day, I'd probably say, "No, you're crazy," and it's not for me. But it was because I was well supported. So those lonely hours can happen because I got told, "You just go and worry about performance more than anything else," and that was from at the time, Steve was in footy operations. I had a good footy manager. I had a young head coach in Chris Scott. So I'm getting a little bit off track, but I called that my boardroom more than anything else. These were people that were supporting me. We never sat for meetings. We never took minutes. But what we did was we connected really well. And we had each other's back. And through that, I knew the role that I needed to play in that. And those lonely hours was about performance and getting the best out of myself.
Great. Now, Westy, I don't think you have any books to plug, unless you've written one that I don't know of. But I will say, just on a similar lines, Westy is the main person on our YouTube channel, the Pepstone YouTube channel, which went over 100,000 subscribers last week. So the Trade-Off Show, which Westy is one of the sort of dual hosts of, is a huge reason for that as well. So I just wanted to make you feel just as good as Joel's hopefully feeling.
Unlike you at the Geelong, they call me the pin-up of finance. So
no one has ever called Chris the pin-up of finance. Just for clarification or a fact check. Going back to this lonely hours sort of theme, I mean, I suppose some of that probably resonates for you when you think about trading. Obviously, the amount of trades you actually place versus the amount of research you actually do leading up into the trade. I'm sure that some of that resonates.
Yeah, I think if you get the average client, or when I was actively trading the markets in my old role in London, like you sit there, and the market's chaotic. You get these really volatile periods, and the markets are flying around. There's a lot of emotion flying around. People can't price risk. People can't price certainty. When you don't get that certainty, you get these big moves playing through, and obviously things like liquidity become an issue, and you get these extended moves. But you're sitting there, and you've got your strategy. You might have multiple strategies that you might be someone who's trading momentum, mean reversion, whatever you're going to be doing, your strategy. The markets need to fit that, and where patience comes in, you need to deploy that at the right time. And if it doesn't work out, then you stay out of the market. So, but if you've traded badly in that highly volatile period, like your profit and loss is all you've got to show from it. You can go into the kitchen and you can tell your wife, "Oh, I've had a really bad day's trading." "Oh, that's nice, love. Well done." You can call up your mate who works wherever and say, "Oh, I've been trading really badly. It's been really bad conditions." They don't really want to talk to you about it. So, there are people there. There are dealer groups and people that you can speak to, but for a lot of people, it's quite a lonely existence. And you're trying to tell people about your experiences, and the only thing that matters is your ability to manage that risk and trade well in the environment that you are in. But yeah, it's quite a lonely existence. We don't have a team environment necessarily. I mean, there are groups you can deal with these days, and Twitter's really good now. you can be an alias and get involved in Twitter and share your experiences. But generally, it's you against the markets and the market conditions.
Yeah. Just on that, it's interesting because when you're talking about profit and loss, obviously ours is much the same, win or loss. But when we're playing our best footy, we don't necessarily judge it on that within the walls of the football club. We understand, if you stick to it, and I think back to 2007, more than anything, we had sort of four values that if we stuck to it and if we knew that we were playing that particular brand of footy, then the game would be won. So we could take that out of it. But if we didn't stick to that, then we'd still probably win. But we would give them a bit of a sniff, a bit of a chance to be involved. So I'm not sure if there's anything that you can come back to.
I just think when you say that idea about we had these three values and if we stuck to it, we're going to win. I mean, that is to me is what trading's all about. You have to define you have to get an edge, right? You need to understand what your edge is, how I'm taking from the market, right? I don't care who I'm taking it from. I just need to take money and grow the capital in my account. But I need once I get an edge, I've got to exploit that edge. And when I can do that, and I know the conditions it works in well, that's where I have what we call a positive expectancy. So it can be exactly the same as what you're saying there. When I feel those conditions and I know, I have a statistical edge through back testing on various factors, I have a positive expectancy, and I might lose a few trades and I might take a small loss, but I know that the next one's going to be a good one, or statistically the next one's going to be a good one after that. So that's the holy grail of trading. It's to get that edge, exploit the edge, and to get a positive expectancy in your trading.
I think just on that point, something that you spoke about, Joel, when you were in our offices earlier in the year, and something I've heard other sort of successful sports teams talk about in terms of the mentality is, I think you sort of mentioned the Geelong team decided to celebrate, like a better word, your losses the same way you celebrated your wins, or act the same way. Does that play into that sort of psyche?
It does, and I was thinking that exact point right then. It was like we were always pretty good at coming in Monday. That was the batch test for us. If you could come in Monday and behave the same way, and if you were someone off the street, not know if we won or lost, then that's the good balancer. That we're not going to get ahead of ourselves if we have a big win, or if we have a bad loss, then don't get too down on yourself. Like, just get back and do the things that you need to do. It's a reset moment more than anything else. Last year was a little bit different. We probably fell in the trap of that we were bad losers for a period of time again, through no one's fault. But what we did have at the time of last year, we had a lot of young blokes starting to come into the side. And then we had older players in myself, and there was probably 6 or 7 around me too, that we needed to behave differently so that these guys, not that we accept losses, but when we're going to lose, we're going to make sure that we pick them up pretty quickly and get on with the next week. We didn't lose a game after we sort of decided to do that, so I'm not sure how it behaved. I'm not sure how it worked this year, but what we did, it was maybe a 1%er that make those guys feel really comfortable and work on their game and come back and feel good about themselves. But, when you start adding up all those, 1%ers and you're talking about small wins again, then they come in pretty handy at the end.
I'm guessing that on your side, Chris, that how you sort of think about, I mean, it's obviously slightly different, but how you think about those wins and losses is really important, because, I mean, that's when if you react in the wrong way, then you get away from your strategies, and that's when you start chasing or doing things that are outside of your norm. Right?
Well, unfortunately, losses in trading is a fact of life. It's how you deal psychologically and within the system of those losses. So the best traders are the best losers. The ability to lose and not let it affect your psyche is absolutely. But then also how you win. If you start having this, if you've got a strategy and it's working well, and you've got an edge, and you start having a series of wins, like, what you don't want to be doing is then start increasing your position size and thinking, I'm an invincible trader, and then you increase your position size, you increase your leverage, and then the markets turn, bang, and then you get wiped out. So it's being able to deal with losing trades. Losing is a fact of life, right? And people will lose money. But it's how you deal with those losers is what will keep you in the game, for sure. So ego is your biggest killer. You know, we get a lot of people who make a lot of money through property and various factors, and they've grown a restaurant empire, for example. And then they suddenly go, because I've done really well in that, I've got a really good family, that I'm going to do really well at trading. But one of the things is that they're just not humble to the markets. You know, the markets are this aggregation of all behaviours and flows all taking place at once. It is way bigger than one human being, even if they're the most successful human being in the world. And our job is to try and make money from that. But if you're not humble to that, then it won't end well.
Yeah. And from our point of view, it's taking the emotion out of it. I could probably pick out maybe 20 times over my. I probably played with the coach 250 times, Chris Scott. He probably spoke to me, to the group, 20 times after we played. So there's 230 times he decided not to speak to us after a game because he's too emotional. You know, and the group's too emotional. We don't know exactly the role of everyone playing. So he would go away and get his strategy right and then come back on Monday or Tuesday and go, this is what we did well, this is what we can work on, and this is how we'll go forward. So, and to be honest, that was a good way, again, that we could come in Monday and know that was coming, rather than listening to it, 10 minutes after the game tonight and then everyone deciding that they're probably not in the mind frame to take it all in.
I think in the book, I think you sort of talk about your own sort of struggles with that. Obviously, as a sort of 20-year-old in the early 20s, obviously that sort of emotion is a huge challenge. And in your career, I think the first 50 games, I think you had a 92% win rate. So you didn't have to deal with this that much. But getting sort of to the sort of later stages of your career, you sort of talk a lot about how you tried to deal with that emotion and how that sort of worked with teammates. How did you sort of think through that, and what were the...
Well, I think I got pretty good at it at a young age. I don't know why it ever come into my thinking, but for those online, Geelong's about an hour away from where we play down here in Melbourne, but I always had the belief that I should leave my mood in the car. So in saying that, you finish at the MCG, the guys will finish about 11 o'clock tonight. By the time they fight through traffic, they might get home maybe about 1 o'clock. That's a good time to have a think about, what's happened out there throughout the game. Who you've upset, or the kick that you didn't get right. That perfect game that you wanted to play that you'll never play. Just leave it there and pick it up later on. It's time to get into those lonely hours. It's time to prepare. Time to reset again. Go again. So. 1 o'clock tonight, there's going to be a handful of guys back at the footy club preparing for next week. The others go about it differently. That preparing may be getting as much sleep in as they possibly can. So individuals work different, but my way was to leave the mood in the car.
Great. And then, talking about those lonely hours, the opposite of the lonely hours is obviously, the time that counts in terms of, you might have 100,000 people at the G and you're playing with that, which is... You don't generally get 100,000 people watching you trade, Westy. But Joel, on your side, how do you sort of handle that kind of pressure, and how do you, especially with sort of young teammates coming through as well, are you conscious of the fact there's 100,000 people, 100,000 eyes on you, and millions more at home, or?
Yeah, and the emotion that they go through. So you talk about Twitter before. You can quickly jump online and get some. Feedback on your game if you really want it, through those alias accounts. Yeah, exactly. But I just think that we're very fortunate. We set up a game plan that is created around a framework that we allow the players to play to their strengths. So there's nothing, and we continually say that to them. You go out and you play your best footy because the game plan allows you to do that. So if it falls back on anyone, it's probably the coaches that they probably haven't got it right, or pick the side. The right side that mixes with each other. We've got a bit of a tough period at the moment where we've probably got a few of our key players out that have played in those positions for a long time that we're a little bit makeshift, but it's not like the guys under them don't know what they're doing. They're going to bring a different look tonight. I look forward to what that's going to be too, because it will sit within that framework, but it'll be different. So, I feel fortunate that we've always done that. Very, very smart coach. Always, good support below him, which is important. And then, go out there and take the show on. So we're talking about playing in front of, it's probably going to be a 90,000 tonight. And we've got a young kid playing his fourth game. he's probably going to be a deer in headlights. We know that, but we don't need him to be the best player. You know, we actually don't need him to be in the best 18 players. But when he gets his chance, when he gets his moment, go for it. You know, have the confidence to go for that big mark tonight. When you don't think it's yours, just have a crack and support that kid to get the best out of himself.
I might open to the floor. Is there any questions from the group?
That is Shannon Neal too, if we're watching. Shannon is a young, raw kid from WA, and I look forward to him actually playing tonight. You know, he's probably not ready to, you know, play 24 games of AFL, but he could play 3 really good ones for us here. Yeah. So, and you know, that's why I love sticking by those players right to the end, because we haven't needed him all year, but we need him tonight.
Does anyone got any questions for either Joel or Chris?
Joel, just talking about the
We'll give the mic.
just picking up on what Tony said there, as far as that. So there's probably going to be 80,000 plus there tonight. What does that do for the player? So that rise and fall of the market, yep. But it's actually sitting in the stadium, and so the player, you know, is impacted by that.
Yep. So I've been quite fortunate. You know, you get drafted Geelong Cats, you play on Thursday, Friday, Saturday night most of the time. You rarely get a bad time slot. Like you're on most free to air games. You got lots of eyes on you. You know, that's great for the sponsors more than anything else. But for us, you know, you become accustomed to it. You know, the biggest stage, the biggest moments, and getting out there. Where I have trouble with the ups and downs, it's great to come tonight to play against Collingwood. You know, 80,000, I reckon 90. You know, the crowds are massive and big. Next week, you know, we've got St Kilda. It's probably there might be 30,000, and that's the roller coaster that the boys go on. It's not quite as easy to pick up and play in front of 30,000 at the age of 35, but for that young kid, you know, he's just going out there and playing every game and trying to stay in the side. So mine's about managing those and trying to put yourself in that, you know, younger body of yourself too. But I can't say, and I'm sure trading's the same, that you have the same energy for every single deal that you're going to do. You know, that they don't all get you excited. There's bigger ones than not.
All right. Well, first of all, on Shannon, if you could have a word with him before the game and say, when you kick your first goal, if you can find a Pepperstone board somewhere along the line and just stand in front of it, that would be good.
You know what? He actually would too. Yeah.
Yeah, there was a side deal going on there. Do we get excited? No. I mean, every trade, I mean, depending on your strategy, right? So if you're running like if you're a macro investor, macro trader, and you're trying to look at the big picture, you know, inflation, what the Fed are going to do, and what's going to happen to the US dollar and gold, and it's all one big connected situation. Yeah, look, to make dollar doing that, it's hard work, you know, but it's very rewarding when you make money because you're looking at everything and it's all this big chain of events that are coming through and you've made money from that. There's a huge endorphin rush knowing that your research has led you to make money, but you've got to manage the risk around that position. You've got to get position sizing. But in terms of actually entering a position, yeah, it's very rewarding to see that your brain is in focus. Obviously, you get a lot wrong as well, but when you get it right and you can see that the markets have responded to your vision, yes, it's really good. But for a lot of people who are trading very short term, in and out, based on price action, price movement, whatever the situation is, it's just another trade. You know, you can't fall in love with that trade. You've got to get rid of it. If it's not working, get rid of it. Do something that's working. Yep. You know, trading is like your life. You know, if you enjoy something like AFL, you do more of it. You know, if you don't like drinking, you do less of it. You know, so that's the way it is. And the trade should be the same. If get out the trade, you should never fall in love with trade. It's just another trade. Yep.
Any other questions from the floor?
Thank you. Joel, thank you and congratulations. I appreciate your analogy about leaving it in the car, in the vehicle. And you spoke about 2007 where the expectation was you'll win every game, yep. Paraphrasing. Flash forward to 2008, I think you made a grand final. Yep. I don't think you won the grand final. What did you leave in the vehicle? from that result?
I was 20, so to be honest, I was young, and we were a better side in 2008. Like we had grown and matured, and we just made a few mistakes on the worst day, the biggest day. So it was about learning from that more than anything. And then that's still the day of my career, and I speak about in the book that you'd love back. You'd love to, because we weren't going to lose it the next time that we went out. But, it taught us lots of good lessons along the way. 2009, we make the grand final again against St Kilda, and we may not have been the best side that year. We've come up against a St Kilda that was also like really strong and level pecking with us. But on that day in 2009, that grand final day, we had to win. And that was the message all year. Like, I was just a part of the leadership group early on in that year, chosen by the players more than anyone else. And that was the messaging that I always remembered. It was like, we need to make sure that we win. And it was never about that for 2007, 2008. It was just about those values. It wasn't about winning and losing. But we got it right then. 2011, a bit the same. And then we spoke about being ruthless over that period. We turned that into being relentless. We wanted to be relentless in making the next grand final and getting another shot at it. It just sat better with the group. I don't know how many ruthless trades you've made or across, any good business. I don't know if you need to be ruthless in what you do, but we were relentless to get the best we can to give ourselves another shot at it. And some of my toughest losses, prelim finals. So this is the game before you make the grand final. We try to win them. We tried to win every season. And we would walk away from some of those losses losing by 80 points because we tried to go out and win for the whole game. We could have flooded the back line and make it a 30-point loss. How the handicapper works in the AFL, you're not supposed to play off in those finals every year, time after time. I was lucky that I played in 12 prelims out of 16 years. Got a really good shot at winning lots of them. But I only won 6 of them because the game's hard, the market's hard. You're not going to get it all your own way.
I've got a question actually, so if I can take the liberty. We talk about trading and this idea that every trade is the next trade, and we don't fall in love with it. Talk to me about your training. You're coming into a big game against Collingwood, and the guys are getting up for this. They're top of the league at the moment. Teams like Port, teams like the Demons. Yep. When you're going up, how does that feel and your preparation relative to someone like West Coast or North Melbourne, for example? You've got to take it seriously, but you're going to win. How does it go? How does that psychology within the club? Someone like Chris go, you're playing against the bottom of the league team. You've got to take it as seriously as Collingwood, or is there just the guys are taking it a bit more seriously? They're working a little bit more harder going into Collingwood. How does the training go into that situation?
Yeah, I mean, I would be wrong to say that. I as a player, I used to watch the top 8 sides more than I watched the bottom 10. Just because, again, they play on the best times, but also they're the ones that you're going to come up against and you're going to have to beat at the end of the day. Would training have been any different this week to what the guys had planned? Probably not. It's a bit like the market. We didn't know what the injuries were going to be at the start of the week. So the game's always changing. The team's always working behind.
Intensity a little bit more in the training session.
It depends. It depends on what the market's giving us. How the boys have come out of last weekend against Port Adelaide, what they need to work on. I think 2 weeks ago they played as flat as they've played for a long time. I wasn't in the rooms, but how they played the first quarter, come out last week, I don't know if they did much more training or whether they just sat in a room and just had an understanding that they were going to be more brave. And they all agreed to it because in that first quarter on the weekend, they kicked 7 or 8 goals against Port Adelaide. And that will be the same messaging, I reckon, tonight. Hey, we can sit on our hands and we can put up a good fight here, or we can go out there and, unlock excellence, one of our pillars. Be the catalyst is another one, so make magic happen.
You've got a lot of values.
Well, not really. Yeah, no, we have 5. But we sit, you can sit within them and you can make them whatever you want, really, and whatever they feel like to you. And they make sense after you're living in too.
Any more questions from the floor? Richard.
You mentioned two of your values. Do you mind going through all the values and talking to them a little bit?
Okay. I may need some help. I may need some sharpening up, but I'll have a go. So part of our song, we're the greatest team of all. So team of all is about, a group of people that go to work basically. And then this is the vision that I have for it, that's going to enjoy going to work. Set up the environment that, can allow that, bring out the best. The CEO doesn't need to be the smartest person in the room. Get some smart people around you. Let them work. Let them do what they need to do. I speak of unlocking excellence. That's what I probably just spoke about more than not. You sit in a position, but allow it to be yours. Think big. Where's Pepperstone going to be on the billboard tonight? Can we make it brighter? How have I gone here? Be the catalyst is one. So that was about making magic. That was probably more, probably come more from the players, I reckon. Hock might think differently, but we just needed to, we thought we probably needed to be a bit more sexy. Last year, where we played a game style where we kicked and marked a lot. In footy terms, and there's probably a few in the line, but we had the two best key forwards in the game, so they're the ones that kick all the goals for us. It was like, how can we get it to them as quickly as we can? That's been the catalyst to me. Let's run it. Let's take it on. Let's go.
For our staff on that one, it's more about every day you show up is your first day. Right, so bring that energy like it's your first day in the organisation, and I do that as a CEO, and it permeates right through the entire organisation. Players slightly different. To Joel's point, you can make them what you want them to be. The guiding principles sit above. You've got two more to go. Well, we've touched on.
Where we come from, so we come from Geelong, but we come from Cardinia, and Cardinia's spirit is about knowing where we come from, what we stand for. The land was there a long time before us, and that we should live, like, get the best out of each other, and pull that together. Can I touch on that one? Yes, you can. Just quickly, because there is a story to it.
Yeah. So Cardinia Spirit is what it's called, and Cardinia is an Indigenous word. So where our home is, Cardinia Park, GMHBA Stadium, is where Indigenous First Nations people used to gather, and the MCG is no different. Many of the football ovals right around the entire country are actually built on gathering places from 80,000 years ago. Like you're talking just so far back, it's not funny. That's where the First Nations people used to gather. So Cardinia Spirit means new dawns. So it's very relevant for a football club. Every time you show up, you're looking for a new dawn and, the rising sun. So, yeah, that's a really important one.
And then what we started with today, so connected through calm and chaos. And I reckon coming out of COVID, you would have found that a lot of the members within our team, and I'm not just speaking about 46 players, but we also have 50 staff around them, Hock, more. And then we've got the girls program, obviously, with Meg's the leader here. And their team, that's another 60 people. And then we've got an upstairs department that's, you're talking nearly another 100 people working. 140 people up there. So we're not only speaking to a group of, 40 players that, 23 that you'll see out there today. So connected calm and chaos was know that you supported well. And let's go at our speed and make the right decisions and reset and go again. I forgot to say through those prelim losses, like the one thing why I think Geelong stays up the top of the ladder more than not, because we have a breath. We take a breath more than anyone else, any other side in the AFL, and we reset properly. We have that goal to go again. Some probably think, oh, we're close, let's make a decision. Let's go, keep working through it. Whereas there's they hurt us, those losses at the end of the year, but we know that we need to reset and go. So that's staying connected through calm and chaos, knowing that we need that time. 5 out of 5. 5. We only had 5.
Richard, do you have any more quizzes for John?
Well, I was going. I could actually give it to the architect of our values actually, and give it to Tamas and ask you which is your favourite value of Pepperstone. You're probably the man to speak to.
We've got. I won't go through all our values because we haven't got much time. But the value that I think I like the most. Well, there's sort of two. But one is be the entrepreneur. So we really do encourage entrepreneurial behaviour. It's not about asking for forgiveness, not permission. I sort of say that occasionally, but that's quite flippant because you got to behave yourself. But at the same time, having that entrepreneurial spirit allows us to do amazing things, because to do something different, something new, you got to have an idea, and the idea's got to come from somewhere. So if you need to encourage people from any level of the business to come up with some really good ideas, so we can transform Pepperstone into something really special, which it already is, but we've got grand ambitions. So entrepreneurial spirit for me is probably the number one value that I love in the business, and we reward people that behave in the right manner. So,
that ties very closely into Be the Catalyst, which is almost worded almost identically, which is very much a lot of alignment there.
Great.
You said you had two.
The other one was is courageous and collaboration. So I love collaborative environment. We've got people all around the world. We've got over 400 people in, I can't count how many different cities we've got staff, and it's very, very difficult to have a bunch of staff that collaborate effectively in so many different time zones and so many different regions. So collaboration is key. And to coin a phrase, to lift something heavy, you need help. You can't do it on your own. So collaboration is so important in our business. So that's the other thing that I hold very dear. Yeah.
Okay, we might take one more question because I think everyone's probably pretty hungry. Wants to get into that second course. Is there one more question going? First hand up. Down the end there.
Joel, you've recently become a dad for the first time. Can you touch on the role of so round of applause. Can you touch on the role of family in reaching the heights you have and your broader support networks in being so successful?
Yeah, well, quickly, I was one of 4 boys. Had 2 brothers also play in the AFL before me. They were twins, 4 years above me, and they went interstate to Brisbane and West Coast. I had a younger brother, 20 months, who also got drafted to West Coast too. So 4 of us were playing league footy. But to fast forward, myself and my wife, we've been together. We got married, it's just before COVID started, 2020. We, along with everyone else, and we've shared it in the book, but we just thought the life was of the journey that you get married, you enjoyed the romance through there, and then you go on and have a family. That's what we wished for, and we planned on doing that. The journey took a little bit of a different path where the pregnancy side didn't come easy to us. Fertility issues, not only my wife, we probably always think of the women, that it's, their problems, it was my sperm count too, that, not that it didn't work, but there was this, you get a rating out of 5, mine was 2.5. Why I share all this is, because the journey of football, us being, looked upon by 90,000 tonight, being, judged by another million that are watching the TV. The most important thing for me the last 18 months, 2 years, has been being by my wife's side and trying to get pregnant. And I went to a really nice place to go to work, if I can call it that, because I was able to take time to sit in, a doctor's room in East Melbourne, basically, every 2 weeks for a period of time that we were going through different cycles that she had to with IVF. I had a new appreciation of the diligence and, everything that she had to go on a clock. She was on an IVF clock. I always had a footy clock. I had one for 16 years, but the IVF clock was something else. And how perfect you need to be through that, I didn't know. So I was so lucky I come out of it. You fall more in love through tough times like that. And I sure did that. And I'm at the other side of it now. But we tell the story of that we got, and we hope that we show love out there too. But we hope that we give hope to others that are going through same problems. More than anything else, it's not to celebrate. Young Joey is my boy's name. We sure do that. We love him dearly, but it's we just hope that people out there, get the same luck as that if they choose that in life. So, being very fortunate.
That's it's a lovely story. I think
That's a quick version.
yeah.
So
I think just from my perspective as well, we got 3 kids and they're all lunatics. When you're focused on the screens and when you're connected with the markets, and to be able to have that separation, to be able to come out and to run around and do something that's completely different, gets your head in a different space. It gets your head right, so you can come back and attack it the next day. So you doing bath time and all that kind of stuff, but it's time out of the markets, away from the screen, and you can just have that reset. So I think it's just really important in our world as well.
yeah. Well, I personally don't think that professionals do that enough. Think of that moment that you are taking a break to be dad. You're not being a babysitter. You got to be dad, and you got to be on. Put the phone away and make sure you're in the moment. Because we speak about being in the moment. We speak about the boys being in the arena tonight. Yep, that's great, but
You need to recharge.
you do.
Yeah.
Fantastic. That's a really, really good note to end on. Massive thank you to both Joel and to Chris for giving their time today. It was a fascinating chat. Round of applause.
Certainly. Thank you. Thank you.